Reactivity is one of the quickest ways to get stuck in a loop in your marriage where your spouse hurts you and you react to the hurt that they've caused, and then they react to your reaction. Every couple has been there, done that. But there is a way to reject reactivity, and that's going to be our focus in this episode of 4 Habits to Transform Your Marriage. I'm Carrie Decker, your host. We'll be right back. My guest today is Dr. Grace Sidbury. I love talking to Dr. Grace. She just has so much good insights to share, and particularly on this topic of reactivity, is that this is one of the areas that she specializes in helping couples to truly build a love that lasts. And so, Dr. Grace, I'm going to put it out to you just directly. Why do we get so nasty with those that we love?
Yes, certainly one of the most painful things I know in a relationship. So in order to understand this, I have to kind of take you a little bit into our biology and how we are beautifully created.
Yeah.
There is a natural instinct that we all have when we feel that we're being whether challenged or attacked in some way to hit back.
Yeah, okay, that's me. Now, I don't get abusive with my wife. I'm telling you, I don't get abusive with her. But when I'm feeling criticized, when I'm feeling judged, it's too easy for me to get defensive. What's that about?
Yeah, that is. So there's a part of our brain, a small area in the brain called the amygdala, that has the job of identifying whenever we might be in a threatening situation, and that threat could be something as simple as a comment or a particular even tone of voice that we interpret as a threat.
My little lizard brain goes to work.
Yes, and so we tend to react, and when we get into that mode of reacting, and basically it's the body's fight-flight mechanism that comes into play, when we get into that mode, it's as if we are using tunnel vision, and we're just focused primarily on defending ourselves or in some ways even kind of fighting back. And so unfortunately, when we have those situations where someone has commented or whatever, has implied something that we take offense to, we're not thinking from a rational sort of perspective. We're really coming only from the standpoint of wanting to defend self and or to attack. And so that's oftentimes why people say things that they would never dream of saying if everything was fine and they were thinking in the rational, logical way.
Yeah, I have a therapist friend, and he says that none of us do a good job of being caught off guard.
That's a good way to put it.
One of the things that has helped me is that I'm a great believer in just having little sayings that I can go to when things start to unravel or things like that. Because instead of just reacting, that if I know I have this saying in my hip pocket, I can use that. And for me, one of those is just simply this. Stop, wait, let's back up and see if we can talk about this in a way that we're both going to feel good about,
That's great, because that gives you an opportunity to pause before you simply just react and say the thing that is on the tip of your tongue that you want to say, but might definitely regret it if you were to say it.
And so I think that idea of let's have a conversation in a way that we both are going to feel good about, because when I'm under attack, I'm not feeling good about that. But then when I react, then my wife isn't feeling good about that.
True.
So that beyond neurobiology, how about relationship history or even family of origin stuff? How does that play into our reactivity?
It plays a huge role because, we learn how to relate to each other based on what we've experienced in the past. And let's just say if a person has grown up in a home environment where it was not like the most emotionally secure, and I'll use certain psychological terms here, emotionally secure kind of environment, meaning that there was a lot of anger, a lot of whether it was a parent or some other individual constantly upbraiding the individual who's now the
Yeah.
adult as a child, and just a lot of tension and conflict in that home environment, then it would make logical sense that the person growing up would learn to be on guard, and
Yeah.
especially tuning in to certain things that would let them know that the situation that they find themselves in is not safe. And that might be whether a tone of voice, or it might be a particular posture or facial expression. And so if now the individual who has grown up in that environment finds themselves in a relationship where the spouse has a particular tone that individual has learned to interpret as being, all right, here it comes, there's this sense of disapproval or criticism or whatever, then whenever that tone is present, the individual is going to find themselves kind of running into that space of being reactive. So it definitely plays a big part when you're grown up in that kind of an environment, or if you've been in a previous relationship where there's been just a lot of tension and conflict and
Yeah.
all of
Yeah. You know, that I had great parents growing up. I mean, okay, that they had their problems and stuff, but I can see exactly what you're talking about because there's a couple of things about both my mom and my dad. My dad, when he got mad, you knew he was mad. He never did beat us or anything like that, but his temper was explosive. And my mom, she was she was she was very, very, very concerned about making sure that we never did embarrass her, or the family in public. And so and so there was that kind of like that angry component and that critical component. And it's too easy, I think, and I agree with you that when we come into our families of our own and we're starting to build our own marriages, to still kind of be conditioned to think in terms of mom and dad.
right.
Do you think we ever actually outgrow that?
I think those things tend to stay rooted very deeply in our psyche, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something that we have to learn how to manage. And so one of the important ways of learning how to manage how we interact and how we respond to the negative things like criticisms or
Yeah.
whatever, is first of all learning to be aware of self.
Yeah.
It's really an amazing thing that, and I'm sure maybe you've heard people say when somebody is very upset, and maybe somebody else points out, it sounds like you're very upset. I'm not upset, is the response.
Yeah. Yeah.
Self-awareness. And it is important for us to really try to look at self so that we can really have an understanding of how it is that we come into the relationship and how it is that we engage and or respond to our spouse.
Mm-hmm.
So awareness is a very important thing to start with. And then there's certainly some other steps, I think, that can help
Yeah.
us to
Yeah.
learn how to better manage. And, I can talk about that too.
Yeah. I love what you said about we can manage. We don't necessarily outgrow, because we just never outgrow our brokenness this side of eternity. Is that I'm always going to have aspects of brokenness in my life. My wife is always going to have aspects of brokenness in her life, and we live in a broken, fallen world, and we're just never going to outgrow that stuff. But we can learn better how to manage those. And you talked a little bit about self-awareness when it comes to managing that. What are some additional tips that you could give to couples who want to manage their reactivity?
So one of the very simple, seemingly simple
Mm-hmm.
techniques that I oftentimes refer to is a breathing technique.
Yeah.
Now, when we get really upset, whether at our spouse or just in general at whatever traffic or whatever it is, there's certain things that happen in the body. Going back to our biology, certain
Yeah.
things happen in the body. Our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up, our muscles, especially in the extremities, arms and legs, tense up,
Hmm.
and we're in this mode again of fight or flight. And let me point out that when couples get into arguments and disagreements, oftentimes we see one of two things. You might see a person wanting to let's talk about this, let's work
Yeah,
this
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, kind of that hyper insistence on getting it resolved.
Right. And so they're
Yeah.
in fight mode.
Mm-hmm.
The other person may tend to habitually kind of walk away, leave the room, leave the
Mm-hmm.
conversation, and the amazing thing that we tend to see is that you will have these two different individuals, one who's a fighter and the other person who flees, and so it just makes for a very challenging kind of situation to try to work through the problem.
Yeah, yeah.
So going back to the breathing exercise that
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to kind of share with you is
Sure.
one of just really pausing and paying attention to your breathing, and just paying attention to how it feels as you inhale and then as you exhale,
Yeah.
and just paying attention to the inhalation and the exhalation of your breathing for a few moments. It's a powerful way of calming the body down, because when we're in our fight or flight mode,
Yeah.
we tend to shorten up on our breath, so we're not breathing fully.
Okay.
And again, we're in this mode of being very reactive. So taking a few moments to breathe, breathing being a
Yeah.
relaxing, rhythmic kind of experience or process, helps to calm us down physically, it calms us down emotionally, and then it helps take us out of that zone where we're in tunnel vision, just wanting to react, and we're in a better place where we can think more clearly.
I'm
So it's a
doing
very
it. I'm trying it right now while we're talking, and now hopefully I'll be able to remember it. And next time I'm feeling judged or criticized, I'll just
right.
take a couple minutes out, or a couple
Yes,
seconds out, moments.
but one of the other things that's even, I think, even more beneficial. So yes,
Yeah.
use the breathing
Hmm.
exercise whenever you find yourself in a situation where you are very upset or
Yeah.
annoyed or whatever. But then it's also even more powerful to use the breathing exercise regularly.
Hmm.
you know, I suggest to people at the beginning of your day, basically we live in a very, very stressful world.
Yeah.
All things demand our attention and just things are challenging. So most of us, without recognizing it, we're pretty stressed.
Yeah.
And
Really.
by the
Yeah.
time it comes round to a spouse making a comment, or even your child saying something to you, it's easy to go from you're already stressed out to, reacting. And so to better manage just our overall experiencing of stress altogether, it helps us to take a few moments to breathe. And I suggest somewhere at the beginning of your day, before you kind of get caught up in all of what life demands of you in your day,
Hmm.
take a few moments to breathe. Especially if you do spend some time in prayer or devotion, I think it's a
Yeah.
great way to kind of get into that. Just kind of
Hmm.
calm yourself, calm your mind, and just sort of set your focus on trying to make this as healthy a day as you can, where you're
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
manage how you interact with people.
So when it
So
comes to this topic of reactivity, we're talking about learning how to become mindful when you are starting to feel stressed and ready to fight or flight. Taking just a few moments to settle yourself with breathing. What additional tips might you be able to offer for couples to manage their reactivity?
So another really important thing, especially when it comes to your dealing with an issue related to the marriage or to the relationship, it's so important to remember that you and your spouse, are on the same team.
Yeah, yeah.
That notion of there's a union there between the two of you, and so she or he is not your enemy,
Yeah.
which is how it feels.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, people get into
Yeah.
their conflicts and so on. So to try to keep that in mind, that you're on the same team,
Mm-hmm.
and so therefore, whatever the issue is, there needs to be a sort of a mindset, an approach from, okay, how can we together work on whatever that issue is, as opposed to that we're, kind of in conflict or fighting each other
Yeah.
to resolve the issue.
Learn to attack the issue rather than each other. You know,
Absolutely.
that's easy. By the way, why is it so stinking hard in our most intimate relationships, but for instance, like in business relationships or in ministry relationships, oftentimes it's so much easier to shift your focus and say, well, let's attack the issue rather than each other. Why is it so difficult in our intimate relationships sometimes to make that shift?
Again, because we have learned to habitually respond, and with reference to, again, how our biology is, how we are wired, we tend to be that kind of reactive. So we just really have to work at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that it's just like breathing one time or whatever is not going to fix it.
Yeah. No simple fix, folks. Sorry.
Yes. And then even with the best of intentions,
Mm-hmm.
like I can tell you certainly for myself that this is stuff that I talk about with people all day. So and in my own marriage, I still find myself being reactive at times. So the point is that mistakes will be made.
Yeah.
That's going to happen.
Yeah.
We're going to make mistakes. When we recognize that we've made a mistake, the important thing is to own up to, okay, I'm sorry.
There you go.
I
Yeah.
accept responsibility for what I did or
Mm-hmm.
what I said, apologize, and make it a genuine apology, not an apology of, I
Yeah.
apologize, but if you didn't do such and such,
Yeah.
it's the apology. So a genuine apology, and affirming that I'll try to make sure that I don't do that again, or I
Sure.
manage
Sure.
myself better next
Sure.
time.
Sure. That sometimes I think the reason why we don't make a genuine apology is we're still fuming over the conflict, and we haven't yet leached that anger out of our system,
Yeah.
and we just kind of stay stuck in that space.
Yeah.
And so maybe sometimes before even making a genuine apology, we could just say, right now I'm really struggling with processing through this, and so I need a few moments or
True. That is
whatever.
a very good point, an excellent point. Because
Yeah,
yes, it's
yeah,
important. I feel like one of the other things that I tend to recommend to couples
yeah,
is that there is an issue or conflict that is getting ready to happen. It's important for somebody to recognize it and call for a timeout.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
when
yeah, yeah,
when either person is upset is not the time to try to have a conversation to resolve anything, because it's not going to go well. It
yeah.
would be much better to say, let's just stop
Let's
here.
take a break. Yeah,
Let's go ahead, kind of go separate ways, and just calm down. And then after they're both people are calm, they can come back and try to talk more reasonably through whatever the issue is.
yeah. Go to your separate corners.
So, yes.
And so, and that, I think one of the things that we need to be aware of is that we don't necessarily need our partner to buy into this, because even if our partner's engaged and they're angry and upset with us, and they're right now trying, or at least want that to be heard, you can always take a time out for yourself and just say, right now I'm not in the space where I can talk about this.
Right.
And so I need to step back. I want to come back to it in a little bit, but I need to step back.
Yes. And it's so important that the other person honors that.
Yeah. Some people are like a dog on a bone, and they just won't give you any space.
Right.
so, so how about, do you believe that lasting change is possible? Can we get to the place where we end up with sticky change? So in other words, it's not something that just keeps on kind of like going away, but can these habits be broken or at least improved upon?
Yes, I definitely believe so, or else I wouldn't be in this business.
Yeah, really.
Change certainly is possible. The thing is, though, I know a lot of times people, because whatever the issues are that bring a person to desire change, or those are difficult issues, they want to see it happen like now, or
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
right?
It's like going to the gym.
Yeah, yes, and expecting the results, like in a very, very short space of time. So, no, life doesn't work like that. And also, I think that the realization needs to be that healthy relationships require constantly working at it. You
Yeah.
just don't reach a pinnacle of having arrived and
Hmm.
everything's wonderful and forever and ever, amen kind of thing. It's a constant working at it, and recognize that there will be times when it may feel like, well, you've taken two steps back or
Yeah.
something, so therefore you have to kind of keep working at it to bring it forwards again. But definitely, positive change and healthy change is indeed possible, and if the two people are committed to
Yeah.
really try to work at
I
it.
love that word that you said there, healthy change, because I think that what gets us stuck oftentimes in marriage is expecting happiness. And
Yeah.
if we shift our paradigm from trying to be happy in marriage to trying to be healthy in marriage, and that it's going to start with me. I'm going to become the person who is the advocate for health in this relationship, and I'm going to learn everything I can about being a healthy spouse. Is that I think that when we take on that ownership, is that we begin to see all sorts of kind of change in our relationship.
I would agree with that, and I think the sense of happiness and fulfillment comes as a
Hmm.
result of the efforts to try to be healthy.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, we're almost out of time here, Dr. Grace, but I love talking with you. You have so much insight on these topics, and I'm sure that you're the individuals and couples who have the opportunity to meet with you are genuinely blessed themselves. I know you have some downloads on your website that people can go to, and we'll post those in the graphics so that people can have that link and to be able to benefit from that. Any words that you'd like to share in closing when we're talking about reactivity?
yes. So again, just to affirm that it's an ongoing process, and again, I think to make sure to take the time to be mindful of self
Mm-hmm.
and mindful of how you're coming across,
Mm-hmm.
and to really try to be focused on trying to manage self with the breathing and doing the things that promote individual health,
Yeah.
individual emotional and physical health. So,
I'm going to do the breathing. I'm telling you right now. That's my new practice that I'm
okay.
going to become mindful of when I feel in times and when I feel defensive, I guess. So thank you so much. That's one of the great things about Four Habits to Transform Your Marriage. We're not only talking about great concepts here, but we're also sharing some very practical tips on how to improve your life and relationships. And so there are plenty of great content here. And so keep checking out what we have to offer. I'm Kerry Decker. I'll see you next time.